Hey y'all, so this is domestic violence survivor vlog part 3. Um, so I went through domestic violence. I grew up seeing it as a child. Eventually, my parents got divorced, and I would still catch abusive behavior when we would go visit my father. We had court ordered visitation, me and my sister. And my dad, he still, even though he ended up eventually getting clean, he stopped drinking. He went to Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous and, stopped using drugs. He still had a controlling problem, and he was still had anger issues, and he was still abusive on those visits that we would go visit him at. So sometimes I would still catch it. We would still get into arguments. Sometimes I would be slapped in the face. Sometimes I would be beat with a belt, that would have marks. Sometimes I would be, called a bitch and be compared to my mother, who he was salty at because they got divorced. Then my mother, because she endured what she did, she also became abusive, calling me and my sister bitches and stuff like that. And it's a cycle. It's a cycle. They say that hurt people hurt people. Well, that's exactly what it was. Hurt people. And the way that, people in the family dealt with these issues is that they would deny it. If you were to ask them, well, did they do such and such to me or such and such to someone else? They're going to lie and say no. My father, well, he'll admit it. But my mother, no, she's not going to admit what she did. Some people deal with the evil things and the abusive behavior that they did because they don't want to be held accountable, or they think they're right for the way that they treated you. So, yeah, it's like some people they operate in denial, and that's what I've dealt with in my family. My family experience has been denial. You know, this has been the type of family experience where people will stab you in the back, people will betray you, people will lie on you, accuse you of crimes, people will be violent towards you, people will make up all types of rumors about you to ruin your reputation, and they will never apologize. They'll start talking to you like they didn't just screw you into the ground, like they didn't just stab you in the back, like they didn't just betray you in the worst way, like they didn't do anything to you. They won't apologize for it. They won't take accountability for it, and they will just start talking to you like everything is okay and like everything is cool when it's really not. So that's also been my experience. Family violence. You know, I had an experience where when my grandmother was alive, she began to be neglected. You know, I would go visit her and she would be kind of disheveled. I noticed that, her hygiene wasn't completely great. She had an open sore on her leg, and that meant that she wasn't going to the doctor and nobody wasn't really taking her to the doctor. She would always be locked in her room in the house, and she would have a lock on her door. She even had a refrigerator in her room, and I'm thinking, why does she have a refrigerator in her room? Because the people in the house would complain when she would go and make food, and it's her damn house. So, I kind of put two and two together, started looking up some things, and I realized that that was a form of neglect for her. It was kind of like elder abuse. You trying to, take over her house and, not take care of her, when she's in a state where she might need help. And that's a form of abuse too. And so I decided to take a stand against that. And I ended up being accused of stealing, you know, I got accused of attacking my sister. I got accused of stealing a camera in the house. I got accused of all types of stuff, and these things was written in court. So, and because it was all three, my mother and my two sisters, they all colluded together, right? To say all of that. Then what ended up happening was that the judge, because there was 3 against 1, just me, he believed their story, and then he ended up giving them an order of protection, right? So at that time, I went to college for law, and what I did was I put in an appeal. I put in an appeal because I know that I didn't do all the stuff that they were accusing me of. So I fought back, and I went to court, spoke to a lawyer, wrote up a brief, ended up going to appellate court, and eventually that order of protection was dismissed and it was overturned. And later on down the line, my mother ends up getting arrested because she put her hands on my grandmother, and it ends up being ironic because she ended up doing that, and it was ended up being reported. What ended up happening was that the criminal court gave me and my grandmother orders of protection against her, But by that time, the damage was already done. All the stress and the neglect, all the stuff that my grandmother had been going through, it affected her health. It affected her, her mental state. She ended up having a stroke, and then she ended up dying, I think maybe about after that assault, after my mom put her hands on her, she ended up dying 2 weeks later. She didn't live long after that. And to this day, I just feel really, really bad because it's like I couldn't save her. I couldn't, I tried to help her and I couldn't help her. And I dared to take a stand for what I felt was right, which was that she shouldn't have been being treated in a certain way in her own house. She should have been being respected. If it's her house, she should be able to go in the kitchen. She should be able to cook her food. She shouldn't be being nitpicked at and argued with because she's going into the kitchen to cook. And if she's having trouble getting out of the house and getting around, somebody should have been taking her to the damn doctor. So, that was one of my main regrets about that. But going through that experience with, the family violence and the false allegations and going back and forth to court, police reports, it was so much. But I came through it and I made it through. I'm grateful to God because God knew, that I was innocent, and it ended up being turned around in court for me, that whatever lies was told ended up being found out, and it ended up being, so that was my experience with family violence, and I'm a survivor of that. I do have no contact with my abusive mother. I just recently started talking to my father after all these years, but I do keep a safe distance because I don't completely trust yet. I do speak with my sister, but it's like I said, my trust level is not there because of all the stuff that I was put through. So I'm going to do maybe a part 4. Peace.